You know, I'm like a pretty positive person, but we're starting this podcast with some fucking anger because why is the UFC not
Yeah, let's
promoting
get.
UFC
That's smart. We
284?
should just get it out.
I yeah, I mean, they tell you not to hold things in,
Yeah.
and we talked
We
about it a little
got.
bit last week, but this is getting outrageous. I think we need to talk about it. So
We need
next,
to talk about it because UFC won't talk about it.
yeah, no, power slap is too important and tough, but tough is important in a way. But anyway, we'll get to the big fight that's next week that the UFC is really not hyped up at all besides their countdown video, which was awesome, but they do that for every event, so it's nothing like different. Because this fight in particular, you know, we've talked about it before. Islam Makhachev versus Alex Volkanovski, 155-pound champ versus the 145-pound champ. 23-1 versus 25-1 in the midst of their primes. Like, this is one of the best fights that the UFC will ever put together, and you would not know it by how it's by how it's been promoted. I mean, you sent me that video of Dana completely.
In Volkanovski's home country too.
Yeah, you think that would like be a huge thing, like, but no, they don't even talk about that. But like you sent me the thing, Dana doesn't even remember Islam's name. Like, oh my god, like what is he's put, dude. I said this to you like a little bit before the pod, but I think some of it is the fact that he's probably like paying more attention to power slap, like for
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I mean, and all the other, outside.
Just drop my phone, but that's fine. You
Yeah.
can keep talking.
That's all right, but
Yeah, no,
all the other, freaking, like, which is like good, like all the other business ventures, like good for you and all, Dana, but like, you realize it, which I'm sure he does realize, considering obviously what he said earlier in the year, like, the fight, I forget how it was exactly, but along the lines of the fighters, basically the UFC needing him, just as
can't
much,
run
like,
without him,
yeah,
dude.
can't run
Can't run
without him.
without him.
So yeah, you would think that this would still be like, at especially a fight like this and all the other fights that, like, dude, you have John Jones coming back, you have Conor McGregor coming back. You would think all the other, like, all these other fights too that the UFC has lined up for this year, and
They have been promoting those, but and more than this one, and this one's next, like literally this coming week. I don't even understand. Like, I was watching like a lot of fights, like to break it down like at a technical level, like in a little bit, but I. It's crazy. Like I'm barely closer now than I was before, but I'll tell you this: like I'm even more hyped because you watch these guys fight, and they're so technical, and they're truly two of the best in the world in like that range of weight, and they're fighting in their primes. Like that's a big thing for me. Like nobody's past their prime. This is one of these fights that you barely get in combat sports, and the fact that it's a champion versus champion fight too in Volk's backyard, like you mentioned, and like this fight basically fell on Dana's lap, and it's just I don't know. I think that it's tough that this fight hasn't been promoted the way it should be because this is a type of fight, in my opinion, that would get so many new fans into it. Like if they don't know who these guys are before, if they watch this fight, I think it's going to be one of the best. Like that we'll see. I mean, the matchup is fantastic, but I don't know. What would be your early like lean in this one? Like, do you have like because I obviously now that it's closer, I really tried to like think about it a little more, but I'm still kind of torn. I'm gonna pull up the odds.
I think my lean's Volkanovski. I think I've just seen more of him just like, in just tough, bad like situations and predicaments, and not like, he just has that mindset and mentality of like, like he understands like he's not Superman and he's not invincible. He's got, he can be exposed just like everyone else can, especially in this fight with, his opponent obviously. But I just feel, I think the way he just like, I get reminded of, what was it, the Ortega fight where he was on his back and how he has to work from his back and stuff. Like, I just think he's just, his composure when he's in there all the time, like, he just oozes confidence throughout. You don't ever see him get like phased. And I mean, this is gonna, I guess like I guess you'd only see that if like if Makhachev just straight just tires him out with grappling and wrestling for all 5 rounds, and like you just see like you kind of see Volk fade and stuff. In which case, like Makhachev's gonna have the upper hand. And then obviously with Volkanovski coming up a weight class too,
It's
you know.
interesting to think
So
about because his speed is going to be affected, but I still think he's going to be the faster fighter.
yeah,
But
I
then you
think
wonder how his cardio is going to be with the extra weight. So
exactly. Yeah, because he's gonna be doing a lot of. I think he's gonna be need to do a lot of moving in this
yeah,
fight.
if he's not getting up, you know what I mean? Because even getting up is going to be a tough thing.
Yeah,
But I still
like,
think
and then
I
on the
think he's
feet
gonna.
too, like just a lot of circling. You don't want to get backed into the cage, and you don't even want to get in any clinch situation with Makhachev either.
Yes,
So
I was thinking that too. My thing when I was watching him fight, he's very good at like. I think he was doing this a lot against Chad Mendes, Volkanovski when he fought him. He would hit him with elbows to get out of it, and I think that's something that's big that he should do against Islam. I think Volk is going to be pressuring in this fight 100%. I think Islam will be the one on the back foot, and I don't think that's a bad thing for Islam either. I think Islam can work either way. But Volkanovski's always been like the aggressor in his fights, besides maybe versus Holloway. Because in that one, that was just like a car crash. But in this fight, I just think that I think Islam is gonna have to mainly use like the clinch and the wall. Like I think double legs and single legs are gonna be hard against a guy like Volkanovski. And even if he gets him down, I think Volkanovski can pop right back up. Because the thing with like these Dagestani wrestlers is like they have this crazy strength, and that's something that I'm intrigued to see if it's gonna be a big thing. Because I talked about for the Oliveira fight how much I thought that strength was gonna be a factor. But one of the things that I really was kind of like gathering when I was watching fights for this one is like I think both of these guys are going to be shocked at how strong the other one is. And
yeah,
really, this is going to come down to if Islam can hold Volk down. And he's not just going to be able to wrap his legs because Volk is like shorter and he's going to be able to explode out of that a little easier than some of these lightweights. And I do think that Volk is that guy. Like, I think he's pound for pound number one for a reason. I mean, we've been talking him up on this pod for a long time. And this is really the fight where it's like, it's going to be tested because if he wins this fight, man, this is like getting near GOAT status.
Well, I would definitely give you that credit. You've been on before, like way before he was number one, like officially number one in the pound for pound rankings. Like, cause I was still about Usman being on top over Volk, and then you were on the Volk horse before, like Usman lost his title, and then obviously now Volk is like at this point where he is. So yeah, like once again to like kind of bring back the convo from last week about is it Volkanovski like still underrated, like how you can be number one in the world and still be underrated. This fight is going to it's going to answer a lot of questions. And then another thing I mentioned last week about the Khabib factor, who's not going to be in Makhachev's corner. Like,
I don't see that. Well, I shouldn't say I don't think it's going to be a factor because I do.
Well, yeah, for Makhachev in particular, maybe not, but it's still.
It's just like I
a thing.
Would hate if Volkanovski wins and then people start to use that as an excuse because like Islam's fought without Khabib in his corner. Like this isn't the first time that this has ever happened. So like if people like, and I'm not saying like you because obviously I know you're just bringing up a point because it is a point. Like it definitely matters. Because this is someone who's been with him since he was a kid, pretty much. So I think that it definitely is like a factor. But if anyone uses that to diminish like a Volkanovski win, I think that'd be criminal. And I think there's ways for like both of these guys to win. Like I literally wrote down like a bunch as I was like just watching like the fights. One thing that I noticed that I didn't even think of really coming in, but like when you watch the fights, you start to like think more technically about it. But Islam Makhachev's a southpaw, so like Volkanovski has an inch reach advantage. But the fact that that Islam is going to be fighting in that opposite stance, he's going to be like a little bit more out of range than he would be if he was standing the same way. And like that's obviously important. I mean, we've literally been doing that like in your training for the boxing match. Watch Main Card Tiz if you haven't. Episode 1 is out. But yeah, we got that secret juice. I forgot to put it out last week. I was pissed, but. I think, speaking of water, I think for Islam to win, he's going to have to drag Volk into the deep water, like you said. And I think it's going to have to look, honestly, a lot like the main event yesterday looked with Spivak and Lewis. Like, I think that Islam's going to have to take him down relentlessly. Because on the feet, Islam's a good striker. Like, people shouldn't sleep on his striking because he's got power. But Volkanovski, I think, is a top 2 to 3 striker in the sport. So it's different when you're on the feet with that guy, just like it's different when you're on the ground with Islam. That's like why this fight's so intriguing, because both of these guys are incredible in their own ways, but then even in the other person's wheelhouse, they still have like strengths, and like there's reasons to think that maybe Volk won't dominate as much as we think he would on the feet, or maybe Islam won't be able to control Volk easily on the ground. Because I truly think that neither of these guys have seen anyone like the other. I think this is like truly pound for pound number one
not.
versus number two. But the more I
think especially Makhachev.
Yeah.
Like Volkanovski's cleared out an entire division.
Yeah. It's crazy to think about that.
Beat Max Holloway twice.
Three times.
That's right. Yeah,
Three
like
times.
that's great. Like that is unheard of. So.
And beat Aldo. I mean, I think Volk. You could make the argument that he's the greatest featherweight of all time. I think if he wins this fight, he's in like legitimate. Not like now. Let me be clear about this. Like I'm not saying like he is the GOAT, but when you start winning fights like this against a guy who really not a lot of people are picking him to beat. If Volk can win this fight, man, and he'll be 26-1 with a win over Islam, then you already mentioned the wins over Holloway. He's beaten Aldo, Mendez, Ortega, Korean Zombie. Like, this dude's resume holds up. And he's proven that he is the dude that you don't want to mess with. And I like his mentality coming in, too, because he's not afraid.
And he takes a lot of pride in just being active.
Yeah.
Just being in there and just taking on all comers.
And this is truly that type of fight because, not a lot of people want to fight Islam. He wants this. Very much wants this. But he has, like, I don't know, because, you hear all the people. Everybody already knows how Islam can win this fight. It's taking him down, holding him down is a key. I think that he's going to have to use his upper body a lot more than his lower body, personally. And the thing is, I think he would have to, in my opinion, I think it'd be smarter to use ground and pound against Volkanovski rather than just straight submission attempts. Because you were talking about the Ortega fight. I mean, he escaped that one mounted guillotine that was fully locked. So this dude's not exactly easy to submit.
Yeah,
even
Brian Ortega too, of all people. Yeah, absolute freak, jiu-jitsu freak.
See, this is my thing. On the feet, it's just different with Volk because his feints are just something else. He's got such a good jab when it's coming forward and as a counter. I think he's going to kick the shit out of Islam's legs too. I mean, Islam puts a lot of weight on that front leg. I think Volk would be smart to, he should be careful about it, obviously, because all it takes is one catch of that leg and then you're down. But Volk is so good at managing his range. And he's training with some good people. He trains at a gym in Thailand too, with his coaches that he's had at City Kickboxing. But Yuri trains there. Zhang Wei Li is trained there, and I didn't even know that. And he brought in Craig Jones too, again for this camp. And Craig Jones, for anybody who doesn't know, probably the number 2 grappler in the world, in jiu-jitsu. So he's got the training partners for this,
Sheesh.
but. Then you think about Islam's training partners and how you hear that Habib's gym does it. The way Bilal Muhammad explained it on Joe Rogan, that shit's like a gauntlet. So, these guys are, sparring hard. And, it's crazy. You're almost fighting, in these places. And these dudes have, the craziest discipline that you'll ever see. And this is what I'm saying. You could go on and on about these guys and how good they are at everything that they're really good at because they're both so good everywhere, on the feet, on the ground, submissions, ground and pound. It's unbelievable. And this fight, this is why I wanted to talk about this so much because this fight deserves its due promotion. You know what I mean? I would pay $1 million to watch this fight. And we were talking about the UFC a little bit when they raised the pay-per-view price, talk about how this is going to drive viewers away. But if there's one card that I would say is worth the money that they're charging for it, this would be the one. The undercard is good. It's not the craziest that we've ever seen, but this main event, I think, is one of the best that they've ever made in the sport, not just the promotion in the sport. And I think it's going to live up to the hype. But I agree with you. Back to your first point, I'm leaning towards Volk.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
This is as far as betting goes, it's not a fight to bet on. I don't think
it's tough. Oh, I was gonna tell you the odds before when I pulled them up, but
Islam's
a heavy favorite.
Heavy favorite.
Minus 400 on FanDuel.
So I think a hedge is fair, but
DraftKings.
in that case, but I didn't think the odds would be that,
Yeah, Volk. According, this is like, I mean, I could pull it up on like FanDuel or DraftKings on my
Yeah.
phone, but like I'm on just like one of those sites that has like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
sports books. So, like DraftKings, Volkanovski's a plus 300 underdog, and FanDuel he's plus 285. So.
Yeah.
I might
Yeah.
I might put some money
I
on
think,
that.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure Volkanovski realizes that, like, yeah, you're the one coming up in the weight class, so, like, you're the one switching weight classes, so you have to be the underdog by default, pretty much, but I think, the thing with Volkanovski is he's pretty much kind of, like, carried that underdog mentality, like, his entire career.
Isn't it unbelievable that someone could be pound for pound number one in the world and they're the underdog? Like that this is crazy. Like this is one of the best fights ever, dude. I'm sorry.
That's the answer to Chael Sonnen's question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like really, like this dude's an underdog and he's the best fighter in the world. Like right now, obviously John Jones is coming back and that's gonna be crazy in March.
Good for Volk. He just keeps like finding ways to just evolve and just keep
motivated.
putting not just his name out there, but like just the sport and just like UFC in general. Like all these guys, he's like you just mentioned his featherweight resume, and now you're moving up to lightweight, who have a cream of the crop of just killers of their own. You're facing the champion,
and you beat Islam in your like first UFC lightweight fight. Jeez, man, that's incredible. And the thing with Islam is when he's at his best, it looks like he's unstoppable. But one of the fights I did watch, and granted it was a long time ago, but it was his one loss in the UFC, and like even when he's throwing now, he has this power and he's slick and he's very fast with his striking, but he does like leave himself open occasionally, and like that's against a guy like Volkanovski, that's tough. And I know like me and you are leaning towards Volkanovski, but like I should give Islam his due because he is great on the ground. Like this is the thing, if Volk can't get up, he's probably screwed. Like that's the biggest thing here. Like all the things that I'm talking about is if he can get up. I just personally believe that he can. But if Islam can really drown him, then this could be a really long night for Volkanovski. That's why I said I'm back and forth. Like if I had to say what my prediction was, it's Volk 51-49. Like I can't really choose confidently. And I don't believe anybody who has like a definitive answer besides like I get it if you're on one of their teams, but that's different.
I don't have one.
Yeah, it's just impossible. So if you're coming to us for a prediction, you're not going to get a solid one. But if anyone has a solid one, they're fucking lying to you.
Yeah.
That's my view of it.